Giridvaradhari. Jayo Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari. Jaya Girivaradhari. Jayo Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari. Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Prevrajikacharya Stotra Shata Śrimad Abhay Charan Arvind Bhakti-vijñāna Swami Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembly devotees, all glories to the assembly devotees, all glories to the assembly devotees, all glories to Shishi Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Śrīla Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshvabhadrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyutama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Yam Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayano Virahakatara Juhava Putreti Tanmayatayo Taravo Vinedus Tam Sarva Bhuta Hridayam Munimanatosmi. Okay. Is it, what is the verse number? Oh, I was misled. Somebody told me, Kashishvara told me that it's number 24. Huh. Well, anyway. So number 2, right? Okay. Okay. Ditihi Tu Bhartuhu Adeshat Apatya Parisankini Purne Varsha Shate Sadvi Putro Prasusuve Yamo Ditistu Bharturadeshat Ditistu Bharturadeshat Apatya Parisankini Apatya Parisankini Purnevarsha Shate Sadvi Purnevarsha Shate Sadvi Putro Prasushuve Yamo Putro Prasusuve Yamo Itistu Bharturadeshat Apatya Parisankini Purnevarsha Shate Sadvi Putro Prasusuve Yamo. Bhakti Parishankini. Mataji. Ditihi, Diti, to, but, Bhartuhu, of her husband, Adeshat, by the order, Apatya, from her children, Parishankini, being apprehensive of trouble, Purne, full, Varshashate, after 100 years, Sadvi, the virtuous lady, Putrau, 2 sons, Prasusuve, begot, Yamo, twins. Translation. The virtuous lady Diti had been very apprehensive of trouble to gods from the children in her womb, and her husband predicted the same. She brought forth twin sons after a full 100 years of pregnancy. Verse number 3. Utpata bhavas tatra nipetur Jayamanayoho Divi Bhuvi Antarikshe Cha Lokasyoru Bhayavahaha. On the birth of the 2 demons, there were many natural disturbances, all very fearful and wonderful, in the heavenly planets, in the earthly planets, and in between them. Verse number 4. Sahachala bhuvaschelur dishach sarvach prajajvaluch shlokas solkas chasanayah petuhu ketavas chatri hetavaha. There were earthquakes along the mountains on the earth, and it appeared that there was fire everywhere. Many inauspicious planets like Saturn appeared, along with comets, meteors, and thunderbolts. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti-vijñāna Swami Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai. When natural disturbances occur on a planet, one should understand that a demon must have taken birth there. In the present age, the number of demoniac people is increasing. Therefore, natural disturbances are also increasing. There is no doubt about this, as we can understand from the statements of Śrimad Bhāgavatam. Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti-vijñāna Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhe Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Yantah pravishya mama vachimimam prasuptam sanjivayata kila shaktidarah swadam nanyamscha hasta charana shravanatva gadim pranannamo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam svasyastu vishwasya kalah prasidatam dayantu bhutani shivam mithodhiya manascha badram bhajata tadoksa jayadeshyatam no matiratyaha. So we're reading Canto number 3, chapter 17, the victory of Hiranyaksha. And this whole story of Hiranyaksha and his atrocities, and then his killing by Varahadev, take very central and important place in the third canto of Śrimad Bhāgavatam. The idea of third canto of Śrimad Bhāgavatam, from which the story of Śrimad Bhāgavatam actually evolves, because two first cantos are just some introduction to Śrimad Bhāgavatam. The Śrimad Bhāgavatam starts with the third canto, which is sometimes called Sarga, the initial creation. So this third canto of Śrimad Bhāgavatam is explaining the natural tendencies of a human being to exploit material nature. It's a very deep rooted, innate tendency in everyone's heart. We just want to enjoy the material nature, and this desire to enjoy the material nature is increasing unlimitedly. And this desire to enjoy the resources of material nature, to somehow or other to accumulate all possible resources which are available in this world, is very prominent, and it actually gives birth to greed. The initial problem which we all have to face. Human beings, they're amazing. Not only human beings, every living entity, but human beings especially, because their mind wants more than the body can really get or assimilate. The mind of a human being is totally, completely unlimited. The stomach is very small, but the mind is ananta. So. Because of this, the natural, quote-unquote natural, greed develops in a human being. I remember once I was in South India, and I was in one little kind of Ayurvedic clinic, and there was a family there also taking treatment. And little daughter of this family, she was, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years old at that time. She had a very peculiar, taste preferences. She liked everything spicy, even though she was Russian, and she liked all the special tastes. And once I was just walking in, and nobody was around. It was only her was sitting at the dining table, and she got hold of the whole jar of black salt, and she liked the taste of black salt, so she had something there. And she started, pouring, the whole mountain of black salt there, trying to eat it. So basically, that's the idea. We want to enjoy and all these material resources, even though it's foolish, And then I saw she tried it, and she made such a face. But anyway, the impetus, the natural instinct is there. And the demon Hiranyaksha, whose victory we celebrate by reading this chapter of Śrimad Bhāgavatam, which is entitled Victory of Hiranyaksha, is actually representing this greed. If we translate the name of this, the title of this chapter in a different way, it will be the victory of greed. The victory of greed over the common sense, over the, over the our natural, abilities to assimilate something. And that's why he's called Hiranyaksha. Literally, Hiranyaksha means, golden-eyed one. But it's not that his eyes were golden. He just had gold in his eyes. Wherever he would see, he would only see gold. And that's basically the description of our greed. Our greed becomes the lens through which we see this material world. And because of this greed, we just want to exploit this material world, to take the resources of this material world, and in this way, again, quote unquote, enjoy life and try to be happy by this unnatural way. So the story of Hiranyaksha and his killing by Varahadev is central in the third canto of Śrimad Bhāgavatam, because our spiritual journey, which is supposed to bring us to Vrindavan. And Śrimad Bhāgavatam is nothing but the description of this spiritual journey and the evolution of the soul. By reading Śrimad Bhāgavatam, we have to understand how our soul evolves from a crude, instinctive creature which is trying to exploit material nature, how it evolves to become the pure servant of the Supreme Lord and Vraj, who has nothing else in his heart but pure love towards the Lord. So that's what Śrimad Bhāgavatam is. And the third canto, as I said, being the first step after the introduction to the whole story of Śrimad Bhāgavatam, is explaining by which means we can conquer over this first natural instinct, or the first problem which every one of us has to encounter in this life. This insatiable greed to enjoy matter. Even though it will never make us happy, because we are spiritual by nature, and no matter how much matter we have, we will not become happy, because this is not our nature, We can accumulate the whole world as Hiranyaksha did, but ultimately we will get the death blow from the Supreme Lord. But the lesson from this conflict, very important conflict depicted in the third canto of Śrimad Bhāgavatam, is that to conquer over the greed, which wants to conquer over the whole world. Here is the chapter which is called Victory of Hiranyaksha, or Victory of Greed. So our greed, desire to conquer over the whole world, can be conquered over by Varahadev, who represents the spirit of sacrifice. It is very clearly explained in the third canto of Śrimad Bhāgavatam who is Varahadev. Varahadev is the living manifestation of Yajna. When Varahadev appeared from the nostril of Brahma, all the demigods were glorifying him, explaining how each and every part of his body is a representation of some paraphernalia of sacrifice. And sacrifice is a science. And ultimately this sacrifice is a science to enjoy in this material world. But to enjoy in this material world in a very, how to say this, I don't know if it's correct way to say it in English, in a very ecological way, in a very ecologically sound way. You know, the natural greed brings about disasters in this material world. And Srila Prabhupada speaks about this in a purport. And Hiranyaksha ultimately represents this cause of disasters which everyone, especially nowadays, experiences this. Greed destroys the whole environment. Greed destroys the whole material world. Greed destroys everything. It's only greed, nothing else. The whole planet Earth is downgraded to the lower status now because of greed, because of unbridled, unrestricted tendency to enjoy, which cannot be satiated, and therefore there is only one way which it can result in is, you know, one will be killed. And the whole environment before, hopefully, you know, we will be finished, or our greed will be finished before the whole environment is finished. You know, this demonic tendencies is absolutely horrible. There was this Stephen Hawkins, very famous atheist, and he already said very clearly in one of his books or whatever, he said the earth is finished, there is no hope for this planet, so we should think about, you know, relocating humanity into some other planet. Very openly he says this. You know, very shamelessly he said this, that yes, this is already finished, let's finish some other planet. There are plenty of planets in this material world, so this is finished, let's finish the next one, the next victim. So this is what is going on. This is what is being described in this third canto of Śrimad Bhāgavatam, how this greed is destructive for the whole material world, and how we can satisfy our natural tendency to enjoy, because we cannot just suppress this tendency. We cannot just pretend that we don't have this tendency. We do have. Let's be honest. But how to manifest this tendency without harming the environment, without harming other people, without harming the whole life in this planet, is explained by the personality of Varahadev. Varahadev, being the representation of sacrifice, he is teaching us how to live, how to enjoy, how to get resources needed for our enjoyment and for our healthy life in this material world, but at the same time do it in an innocent way, so to speak. And the answer to this question is yajna. Yajna means you do the enjoyment, but you depend in your enjoyment on the resources which are given to you by the Supreme Lord through the means of yajna. When we do yajna, India was, you know, even a few centuries ago, India was the most prosperous country in the world. It's just because of all this unfortunate events of the history. India has become a poor country, so to speak. Still, even now, it's a very rich country in reality. But it was much more rich in the time of Maharaja Yudhishthira. And everyone else, all the inhabitants of other countries, they were trying to conquer over India to enjoy the resources which were accumulated there. How? In which way all these resources were there? Because Indian people knew the secret of yagya. When you do yagya, the nature will reciprocate with you. Yagya is a natural way to express our gratitude to the material nature. I'm sorry, too many natures in one sentence, but anyway. So yagya is a natural way to express our gratitude. Because if we only take and not give, then this tendency is destructive. It's self-destructive, and it's destructive for everything else which surrounds us. But if we take, and we need to take, but at the same time we give it to the demigods. We're conscious that we, as human beings, as intelligent human beings, have to express our gratitude not every now and then, but on a daily basis. Ancient Indian people of Vedic civilization, they were supposed to do yagyas every morning and every evening. Every householder would sit in front of the fire and would do a little homa sacrifice. Of course, it was short, it was practical, it was not prolonged sacrifice. When we say about sacrifice, usually people, they have this idea that sacrifice means some bombastic ceremony which longs many years, and it has to spend so much resources. No, yagya means something which you do daily. Because daily we have to express our gratitude, because daily we are taking the resources from the material nature. We are breathing, we are eating, we are drinking, we are polluting this material world by our stool and urine. We are doing so many things which are not so nice. And we have to be conscious that we daily have to compensate for this. And compensation for this is basically, this sacrifice, or, of course we know in Kali Yuga there is no other sacrifice but chanting Hare Krishna, in a spirit of sacrifice, in a spirit of gratitude. If we do it mechanically, there is no use, there is no point of it. But if we chant with this idea that, yes, I'm taking from you, my Lord, I'm utilizing all these resources which you so mercifully gave to me, so please let me express my gratitude to you by chanting your name, by glorifying you, by going out on the streets and doing Harinam or distributing your books. And in this way, somehow or other, to balance the imbalance which I already create, which I am doomed to create by just by living in this material world. But the point of third canto is, of course, that by having this very clearly established, this idea very clearly established in our mind, we will not only sustain the material nature, but we will gradually also kill or destroy this tendency within the heart to enjoy unlimitedly. If we, gratitude and the spirit of enjoyment don't go together. Gratitude, if you are grateful, it basically means you express that you are dependent on somebody. So gratitude implies humility. And the desire to enjoy implies or needs this spirit that I'm independent. I don't have to express my gratitude to anyone. I can make it. I can become happy myself. And it's basically the expression of our pride. The desire to enjoy is the expression of our deeply rooted pride or ahankar. Like yesterday I was reading a little bit before giving the lecture on this, again, the same topic about the demoniac nature. And it is one commentator of Bhagavad Gita in the commentary to this verse, or to previous verse 16.4, he was quoting Shatapatha Brahmana, where the demons say, you know, where else to do oblations? Because people in Vedic culture, they knew the signs that they have to do oblations. But the demons, they asked this question, more or less rhetorical question, where else should we make oblations? And then they decided actually the best place to make oblations is their own mouth. You know, they take the ladle, yeah, this is the place to do oblations. Basically, if we cherish this ahankar, this pride, then the desire to enjoy will increase. But vice versa, if we cultivate humility and gratitude, then this desire to enjoy will gradually diminish, and ultimately Varahadev in this way will kill Hiranyaksha, little Hiranyaksha in us. Because Hiranyaksha is not only living in this 17th chapter of Śrimad Bhāgavatam, he also has some dwelling place within our heart. So that's more or less the idea why this story is so important in the third canto of Śrimad Bhāgavatam. And each and every little detail of this story, of the combat between Hiranyaksha and Varahadev, are instructing us of what we should do to actually conquer over these demoniac tendencies. And here, in these verses which we read, there is a description of how deity was apprehensive. Apatya parishankini, how she was apprehensive of the troubles which her apatya, her progeny, will bring about. Why she was apprehensive? This to Bhartur Adeshat. She was apprehensive because her husband already predicted this. Adeshat literally means the order of the husband, Bhartur Adeshat, because of it's in Panchama Vibhakti, in the fifth, in the causative Vibhakti declension. So she was apprehensive because of this Adeshat, but here Adeshat doesn't mean order. Here Adeshat means that he basically pronounced that there will be troubles. Why? He made this prediction because he knew that the result of the conception which they went through, intercourse which took place, will be extremely negative. Why? Because the condition of a woman, the consciousness of deity at the moment of conception was, of lust. She was driven by lust, by this greed, or, greed, kama, the desire to enjoy. And it is said very clearly in Ayurveda that your apatya, your progeny, will reflect the condition of the consciousness of male and female going through the intercourse, and the consciousness will define who will be ultimately born. So Kashyapa Muni, the glorious, illustrious husband of deity, he knew very well that there will be nothing good out of this. First of all, because there was this state of consciousness, very lusty state of consciousness, which initially caused the whole intercourse. And second of all, because it was not timely. Because the time of conception was also demoniac. It's amazing how human being, they, you know, when they're producing cars, they make sure that the cars are proper. There is so many, you know, stages of control not to produce car which will broke or create some disturbance. But when they produce children, there is absolutely no consideration of what will be the result. You know, they're just producing it completely haplessly without any understanding what will be the result. And in Vedas, there is a whole science how each and every detail of this very important act to prolong the life of in this earth, how it has to be taken into consideration so that the result would be auspicious. And one important consideration, perhaps the most important consideration, is the time. Because there are moments of time when the lower modes of material nature prevail, when they are more prominent. And if you do the intercourse in these moments of time, it's, you know, according to Vedic astrology, whatever moon is, wherever moon is there, what nakshatra is there, there are some demoniac nakshatras, and some nakshatras are rakshasic of nature. So, and the moon, because moon represents our mind, when the moon is in this environment, rajasic or tamasic environments, by the means of association with this constellation, then it subtly influences our mind. And because the result of the conception is defined by the state of our consciousness at the moment of conception, the result will be bad. So there are very clear recommendations when this intercourse should take place and when it should not take place. For what? Why this recommendation is there? To create peaceful environment. When there are too many demoniac people, the environment becomes impossible. And, you know, you live in New York, so you probably can confirm this observation, which so when there are too many demoniac people living around, it becomes very difficult because the whole life becomes the, you know, struggle, strife. Even simple things are extremely difficult to do. And Srila Prabhupada makes a very brilliant point in the purport. He says that, you know, because again, it's very important to say that the whole Vedic concept, the whole Vedic theory or worldview is based on the understanding that everything in this world is connected. You know, the materialistic worldview is everything is disjointed. You know, I'm myself and I can do whatever I like, and somebody else is himself or herself, and he can do or she can do whatever he or she likes. But it's not, because we are part of the complete system and everything is connected. You know, that the moon and nakshatra where the moon is, and the tithi, the lunar day when the moon is, it influences our mind. You know, the proud materialistic people says, the hell with it, you know, I am the master of my destiny and I can do whatever I like. No, forget it, you're not the master of your destiny. So many external factors influences you. And you don't even, you're so foolish, you know, you don't even notice how the influence is being done. So the whole Vedic understanding is that everything is interconnected. We are all interconnected. We cannot become happy separately from other people. To become happy, we should try to make other people happy. We cannot become happy by creating some evil things, by killing some people, by taking part in a war. Like now this war is going on, it's horrible. But people somehow or other, they're so foolish. They think that they can achieve the desired goal, which is happiness, by doing these horrible atrocities, by doing all these horrible things which they do. And here Prabhupada makes this point. He says that Śrimad Bhāgavatam very clearly says, when a demoniac person takes birth, there will be natural calamities and disturbances. Again, from to the materialist, to the material scientist, this statement doesn't make any sense. You know, what connection is there between some baby taking birth from somebody's womb and you know, the natural calamities? You know, the normal rational scientist will come to us and say, you prove it. You prove it. And Srila Prabhupada proves it. See how much natural calamities are there. This is because demons are being born every second. He gives an empirical proof to this. Of course, this proof will be challenged by scientists. But, these foolish scientists, they don't understand the subtle connections between, cause and effect connections between different events or manifestations in this material world. And we are being a little more intelligent, trying to become a student of Śrimad Bhāgavatam. The first lesson which we should understand, or at least very important lesson which we should understand, is that everything and everyone is interconnected. And therefore, the only way to live here in this material world is to do something good. Every day, every moment, to express our gratitude. And that basically means to become humble and to do something good to people who surround us, to serve others, to do something nice. Otherwise, this demoniac tendency will increase, and the result of this increase of demoniac tendency, we will be destroyed. And before we are destroyed, finally destroyed, so many other people will also be destroyed due to our demoniac attitude. So that's more or less the idea of this particular chapter and the story in Śrimad Bhāgavatam and the verses which we read. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Is there any question? Yes. Yes, please.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
I was wondering, Maharaj, if you can elaborate on this point of sacrifice. Because Krishna mentions in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita that, he came and brought yajna for, by his performance, you'll be happy in this world. Sometimes it seems like sacrifice is an austerity. Sometimes it's not so pleasant. It can be a little, austere to perform sacrifice. Especially in Krishna consciousness, for example, following the 4 regs, chanting our rounds, it seems like a big austerity. So, can you elaborate on this?
Sacrifice is always austerity, otherwise it would not be called sacrifice. Otherwise it would be called something else. Sacrifice implies that you kind of, sacrifice something. So, and as Krishna explains in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there are so many different kinds of sacrifice. When you naturally limit yourself and limit your propensity to enjoy. So it is an austerity, there is no doubt about it. And therefore, it's a little difficult. You have to have faith that sacrifice will ultimately bring about good result. If you don't have this faith, if you are impatient, then it's very difficult. Therefore, humility and patience are two basic virtues which we should have. Patience means just tolerate little bit, the good will come to you. But because people are impatient, because they want the results very quickly, they do these foolish things and ultimately suffer. They get immediate results very quickly. That's Rajagun. Rajagun is trying to give you the required result in the quickest possible way. The best example is allopathic medicine. You have a headache, no problem. You don't even have to go to a doctor. You already know you take this, I don't know, whatever medicine, and the headache will be finished. The consequences which are there listed in the prescription to this, who cares? The result is achieved. No austerity, no patience. So that's Rajagun. This is the attitude of Rajasic people. Give me result as quickly as possible, and let us sort out the consequences later. But if we are intelligent, we understand that happiness in the mode of sattva, in sattva gun, means some little poison in the beginning and a lot of nectar at the end. But poison has to be taken. So with understanding. See, Rajasic intelligence and Sattvic intelligence, the difference between Rajasic intelligence and Sattvic intelligence is that Sattvic intelligence is broader. And therefore, people who are influenced by Sattva gun or who are predominantly Sattvic, they can foresee the consequences of what they do. And they don't only see the immediate thing, they see a broader picture. But because the lower nature, like Rajagun and Tamagun, they kind of, how to say this, they, not squeeze, how to say this? Yeah, narrow. Make our might or intelligence or consciousness, they make us narrow-minded. And this narrow-minded focus is only at the immediate result. And therefore, Rajasic people and Tamasic people, they're so impatient because of this lack of ability to see the broader picture.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, you were speaking on the point of the influence of astrology and how it's very important, how it influences us. Sometimes I may hear from devotees when I bring up the point on astrology or things like that, they may say, but just by chanting Hare Krishna, you could transcend it. So when do we come to the point where we transcend all these different things? What does that look like?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Chant Hare Krishna and you transcend it. But you have to understand what does it mean that you transcend it. You transcend it means, first of all, you only transcended it at the moment when, by chanting Hare Krishna, you completely not identifying yourself with this body and mind. As long as you are identifying with the mind, and usually when we chant with the mind. We are not chanting on a deeper level. We are identifying with the mind and chanting in a very offensive way. So it's only when you are completely transcendental to this body and mind, you're not, you're not dependent on this. But still, because you have the body and mind, the body and mind being material, they're still influenced by these things. You may not be influenced because you achieve this stage of being not influenced. Your decisions and your way of thinking may not be influenced by this. That's possible. But still, because the whole material nature is working according to these principles of three gunas, and astrology is nothing but elaboration on this basic principle of three gunas. To reject astrology is basically to reject this basic concept that there are three modes of material nature, and they define everything in this material world and influence everything in this material world. So even though you may be transcendental to the three modes of material nature, but still your body and mind will be to a certain extent influenced. You may not be influenced by this in your course of thinking, but still some subtle influence will be there. And therefore, the moments of time which we do certain things will be influenced by this nature, because the time is material. You may be transcendental, but the time we are living in and acting in is still material. And therefore, if you do something in a very inauspicious moment, an appropriate moment for this particular activity, the result will be bad. Like, for example, now is November. If you try to go to the field and plant some seeds, and because you're so transcendental and you don't care about the influences of time, and you say, I chant Hare Krishna, let me plant wheat now. It's most probably nothing will grow, and you will wonder, why I'm not so transcendental, why these seeds are not growing. Just because the time is not appropriate for this particular activity. And in the same way, therefore it is said in Śrimad Bhāgavatam, for example, that Krishna got married in an auspicious day. Krishna is definitely transcendental. Still, when he comes here, he is doing it in a proper way, according to the laws of material nature. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Gaura Premanande.